Hey, welcome back to Two Super Guys Trust Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny. And holy crap, we finally get the closest thing we've had to date of a Jay Powell victory speech yesterday at Jackson Hole. I'm going to give you some highlights and kind of what I think about what he had to say in this video. All right, we'll get to it.
No.
So this is my man Jay Powell just sitting on his throne saying mission accomplished. We've had a victory. We've defeated the evil monster that is inflation. And now we have our next battle, which is the American jobs market. All right.
Right. And let's not forget the previous the previous chair. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her
Paul
name.
Volcker
Yellen
yelling. Okay.
had called out during these rate cuts that he's making a huge mistake and needs to stop his course of action right away. He was
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, yeah, let's be honest though, dude. You cannot doubt a guy who's like got the snow-capped head to match the snow-capped mountains in the background of this photo. That is just like pure poetry. All right, this is Powell from Jackson Hole. Actually,
Nice.
that's why I love it. It was very reminiscent of this famous image. You remember this?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
I did not fully pay attention to what was happening, but yes.
It's always so funny because, like, he never once said in the actual speech "mission accomplished," but they have this banner behind him saying "mission accomplished." So it's
Yeah.
like, what is the actual meaning of this speech? Which is always funny to me. It's
I
become like a bit of an internet meme.
This is a
But all right,
small tangent, but the
yeah.
most iconic thing he ever did is the golf one. If you ever saw that, he did a strong stance on we will not settle for terrorism something, and then he pauses. He's like, "Watch this drive." It's live TV.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So Powell kind of basically gave like a two-part speech. One where he talked about like where we are now, and then he gave like a history of the whole pandemic and related inflation surge. Right. It's a pretty short speech. To my knowledge, I couldn't find a question and answer session. He just spoke for like 18 minutes. It was a pretty short by Powell speech, and then no Q&A session. Usually it's like an hour. But in his speech itself, when he's talking about the near-term kind of financial picture, this is what he had to say about inflation. Inflation is now much closer to our objective, with prices having risen 2.5% over the past 12 months. After a pause earlier this year, progress toward our 2% objective has resumed. My confidence has grown that inflation is on a sustainable path back to 2%. All right.
Yeah.
So, we had a little bit of a delay where it wasn't making any progress, but now progress has resumed, and he's fairly confident we're back to our 2% target or on our way to it. On the flip side of the coin, where we're starting to see some issues developing regarding the labor market. Remember, the Federal Reserve has that dual mandate of controlling inflation, but also maintaining a maximum employment. Right? So today, the labor market has cooled considerably from its formerly overheated state. Right? The unemployment rate has began to rise over a year ago and is now at 4.3%. Still low by historical standards, but almost a full percentage point above its level in early 2023. Most of this increase has come over the past 6 months. Right? Remember we
Mm-hmm.
talked about that SOB rule that's now been kind of engaged. SOM rule, sorry. I always think stay at home mom. That's what confuses me. But we have now started to see some rising rates of unemployment, and now their second half of their mandate under controlling inflation has started to come more and more into focus, and they're shifting and pivoting in terms of their priorities. All right, so some more about the labor market. This even tells you too, like how much time was spent talking about the labor market in particular. All right. The hiring and quits rates are now below the levels that prevailed in 2018, 2019. All right. Nominal wage gains have moderated. All told, labor market conditions are now less tight than just before the pandemic in 2019. A year with inflation that ran below 2%, it seems unlikely the labor market will be the source of elevated inflationary pressures anytime soon. All right. We do not seek or welcome further cooling in the labor market conditions. Right. So now he's really trying to say we don't want the labor market to deteriorate any worse, and we've actually taken the labor market back to where it was pre-pandemic. Right.
I think it's going to get much worse, to be clear. I think in the next year, I don't think it's going to be like the spikes that we showed previously because it's a different economic environment. I would
Yeah.
not be surprised if we went above 5 briefly.
It's possible. Did you have like an extra cup of that, like pessimism coffee this morning?
I'm just saying, man, history repeats itself. Whenever we went from 3.6 to like 4.3 in like 6 months. Anytime that
Yeah.
happens, it usually doesn't go great.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We're gonna do a separate video about what this impending pivot may mean for stocks over the next several time periods. That's a great question. Is you have to be thinking about, is this triggering inflation? I mean, a recession or no? That's the major question. All right. So this is his mission accomplished statement, basically. Overall, the economy continues to grow at a solid pace, but the inflation and labor market data show an evolving situation. All right? The upside risks to inflation have diminished, and the downside risks to employment have increased. As we highlighted in our last FOMC statement, we are attentive to the risks to both sides of our dual mandate. All right? So they're shifting their perspective from controlling inflation now to more protecting the jobs market. That's really where their head is at. All right, the time has come for policy to adjust. The time has come. The direction of travel is clear, and the timing and pace of the rate cuts will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. All right, so he's saying it's time to cut. There's no doubts about that at all anymore, is what he's saying. It's just a question of how big and how fast will they be cutting rates. Mario.
So there's been multiple comments on these videos that we do by a couple people being like, hey, and I did not fact check this, but there's never been a rate cut in the September session before a president election or rate change. I don't know. I don't know. Those are completely unrelated things, but disagree. Pretty sure it's about to happen. I don't know why that even matters in the first place, if it's September or November, whatever.
Yeah,
But it's, I mean,
yeah.
we're definitely going to start cutting rates.
Yeah, they're yeah. I can't really make anything out of that. I don't think it matters, right? I only have a
Doesn't.
presidential election every 4 years. The Fed Reserve meets like 12 times a year.
They're also separate.
It's just not like the stars just haven't aligned. How many rate cutting cycles have we had? We've had like 8 rate cutting cycles in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Like it's a
That's,
stupid thing to draw.
I completely
Uh,
agree. For some reason, there's multiple comments on that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's time to protect jobs. We will do everything we can to support a strong labor market as we make further progress towards price stability with an appropriate dialing back of policy restraint. There is good reason to think the economy will get back to 2% inflation while maintaining a strong labor market. All right. So he's still saying there's good reason to think that we may be able to have a soft landing. Right. The current level of our policy rate gives us ample room to respond to any risks we may face, including the risk of unwelcome further weakening in the labor market conditions. So you got our tanks kind of filled here. We could really load the bazooka and drop rates significantly fast in order to kind of protect the labor market if need be, is what he's saying, since we're so far above restrictive rate right now.
Yeah. I mean, I I think he killed out inflation. I really do. I think he did a great job. Warren Buffett called him a hero. I I think I think the labor markets are not about to do well. If I'm being completely honest, I don't. I think I can't remember who it was. It was like Morgan Stanley, or no, it was Goldman Sachs. Just increased their chances of recession by like 12% over the course
No.
of 1 month. I think it is probably going to happen soon. I also think it's inevitable because of all the crazy things that happened in the last 4 years. But I mean, as long as we're going to do a video tomorrow on how that affects the stock market, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
this is when his speech started. When do you think he started talking?
I'm gonna go with that big white sexy bar and the
Yeah,
wild speculations in the market following that.
yeah. It was pretty immediate. Me being I do some day trading. Me being an idiot did not have my calendar of economic events up, and I got screwed. And I was like, "What happened?" And then I was like, "Oh, he's talking shit."
Yeah.
So I looked at the past couple years of these speeches, and the same thing happened last year, where it wasn't a crazy high volume day. We kind of went straight up, and then the following day was a massive down day on huge volume. I I don't exactly know why, but we'll see what happens Monday.
That's scary.
Yeah, never know. There's not enough of a sample size because Jackson Hole's speeches like prior to 2020, no one really cared about. So it's not enough to actually draw a conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild just how important and kind of powerful Powell has become in terms of moving the markets.
Yeah, I mean honestly, for economic events 50 years from now, this whole era will be studied and be like, all right, how do we make sure we can recreate this depending on what happens with the labor market the next year? That's the caveat.
Yeah. Catch you in the
All
next
right,
one.
guys.